walk back. They had to walk 3 kilometers up. And then come back with the van.
Chair Brennan?
Happy that I got it done.
Ready when you are? Yep.
One of the charges is trash. Just put him on. So he just sets him right off.
Want the
Just
hammer?
about it.
Okay, we're gonna begin our community hall meeting on today, November 27th already. And we'll begin with the land acknowledgement on November 27th, 2023. We acknowledge that the sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been the site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, we may care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace, friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. So I'll call the meeting to order, and I'm calling it order at 4:01. We're meeting a bit earlier tonight in light of the great event that's happening at the railway today for the Christmas train. So I'm going to call for approval of the agenda. I'm going to make an amendment to the agenda, and that amendment would be 10.1, which is our in-camera session. So we're going to pull that out, and that'll come at another date. So 10.1 is out, so there'll be no in-camera this evening. Are there any, so I'll have an approval of the agenda that the November 27th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be approved as circulated, moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Miller. All in favor? Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. We have no approval of minutes, no delegations. Are there any CAO directors' reports this evening?
Mr. Chair, we have one, I believe, with Mr. McMahon.
Okay. Good director.
Actually, two.
Two.
Start with Mr. McMahon.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, members of council. Just a couple of quick updates this evening. As some of you may be aware, the Service Line Warranties of Canada have launched their program that's been endorsed by council recently. So mailings have went out from Service Line Warranties of Canada, and I believe some of them have been received by residents around town. Just for folks at home that are listening this evening, there's information in there. This is fully legitimate, fully endorsed by council. We partnered with Service Line Warranties of Canada to offer residents an opportunity to get coverage for their service lines, being their sewer and water that come in from property line into their homes. So for a fairly nominal monthly fee, folks can get some protection for their services should there be issues. They can get Service Line Warranties of Canada through plumbing services throughout Smith Falls to repair their service lines. I just wanted to note as well that their first point of contact should be to call Service Line Warranties of Canada. There's lots of information on the mailing. There's a phone number on there to call should you have questions. However, if people feel they need to reach out to the town for whatever reason, if they have something that's not necessarily noted in the information from Service Line Warranties of Canada, they can call Public Works. Specifically, they can reach out to Emily Richardson at extension 3302, and Emily's well versed in the program itself and should be happy to answer any general questions. Any questions from that program from
Any questions
council?
from council? Received my letter today.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a quick update on Catherine Street. So that project is coming to a wrap this fall. I expect by the end of the month, the contractor will be starting to demobilize. For council's interest and people living on the street and generally people in town, we've installed base course asphalt. So that's the first lift of asphalt. And that's how it will stay for the balance of the winter. And then in the spring, we'll do surface course asphalt. So the contractor is doing iron adjustment over there, meaning that all the manholes, whether they're storm or sanitary, and catch basins and valve boxes and whatnot will be brought up to base course asphalt grade so we don't hit them with the plows this winter. And excuse me, yeah, so top lift asphalt will happen in the spring. Much of the landscaping will happen in the spring, being sod. It's getting a little late in the year, and unfortunately with the cold weather, we can't secure sod from any of the sod farms. Yeah, and that's about it. So it's coming to a wraps. We'll finish up the project in the spring, but for all intents and purposes, the road will be open, be no different for anybody driving down there this winter. Yeah, happy to take any
Okay,
questions.
thank you. Any questions? Mayor Penko?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. How much more work would happen in the spring? Do you expect it would be 3 weeks, a month, or how much more is there to do?
Yeah, I at most I would expect maybe a couple of weeks. Yeah, the paving contractor, they're using Kavanaugh, so they'd mobilize and pave that both Oak Street and Catherine probably within 2 days. And then the landscaping can be happening concurrently while that's going on as well. So a week, week and a half, 2 weeks tops, I would suspect.
And that would be probably as soon as May,
As soon as they
potentially April.
can secure sod from
Yeah.
the sod farms. Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for that. And the next one.
Next, we have Ms. Crowder, our Manager of Economic Development and Tourism.
Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a few quick updates. We're getting into the holiday season, so that's kicking off tonight with the holiday train happening over at the Station Theatre. So that starts at 6:20 today. Festivities will, the band will start at 6:30 and that goes until 7. December 1st is the launch of the Merry and Bright program. So that's an annual Christmas box program that supports our downtown businesses. So if you're interested in finding some local Christmas presents, we encourage people to go down and be part of the program. All the information is on the town's website. December 2nd is our Celebration of Lights event. So there'll be festivities happening from Town Hall all the way down till Confederation Drive. We'll have the annual lighting of the lights, which will happen around 4:35 once the sun goes down. December 3rd is the Holiday Heritage House at Heritage House Museum, and that event runs from 1 to 3 p.m. The other non-holiday related update that I have is with regards to the Bell service. So we've had a number of residents reach out to council and staff over the last few months regarding cell service and the intermission or the issues with the cell service, which can be dropped calls, not being able to connect. So we did a survey with the community. We had 37 responses to that. Basically cell service or interruptions, there's issues throughout the town. We reached out to Bell and we met with Eorn yet last week to figure out what the issues are. It seems like the adjustment in their service from 4G to 5G is where some of this disruption is happening. When they changed over to the new network, it seems like their footprint in the service shrinks. We're not sure why exactly. We didn't get the technical details on that. But the good news, we're working with hopefully Bell and Eorn to reach out to private landowners to see if there's an opportunity to put new infrastructure or additional infrastructure around town on the top of buildings to help increase the service capacity within the town of Smith Falls.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor McKenna?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, Julie, it's not that I doubt the 37 people. Is there objective data that from Bell or somewhere that says, yes, this indeed is happening? Or is it because you can have that perception sometimes? And I'm not saying that's true, but
In contacting Bell and in talks with Bell, they understand that there is a service issue, so they are aware of it. It's just figuring out how to fix the issue and what the timeline is going to be. We also talk to other municipalities, and there are clients, Bell, Rogers, Kudo, that are experiencing the same issues across the region. So it's not necessarily specific to Smith Falls. It's happening within Lanark County as well.
so if I may, it's perhaps the role of just getting a few bugs worked out and fine. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks. And I can attest to the service issues because I think I've been on the phone with some of you. They just keep dropping the call, but I think it's getting better the last week or so. So thanks for your work on that. And I'll just add that the Heritage House, I'll be pouring tea on Sunday, so come on down. Any other? No.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, we have no committee of the whole consent reports, and we have our first priority issue, the draft sign bylaw, and tonight we'll have Planner Grenke here. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Development Services staff are pleased to bring forward a new draft of the sign bylaw for Council's consideration. The draft sign bylaw is proposed to replace the 1994 bylaw, which has undergone several amendments over the years. Council had reviewed an earlier draft in April 2023 and again in late June. On June 26th, Council gave staff several directions to take forward in finalizing the bylaw. Firstly, staff were asked to consult with the Canadian Signage Association to determine some best practices for regulation, particularly around lighting and materials, while avoiding establishing prescriptive design provisions. As it relates to design, Council's direction was that the policy framework would not be so prescriptive or difficult to enforce, as it would result in many requests for exemptions, which would create an additional administrative burden. Staff were also asked to prescribe some specific grandfathering provisions to allow for the maintenance of legally non-complying signs while requiring changes or new signs to comply with the bylaw. Since that meeting, staff have undertaken a consultation with officials from provincial, national, international signage associations, as well as a local manufacturer, and staff are proposing several tweaks to the draft bylaw, which are tracked in the attachment to the report. And the tweaks are from compared to the bylaw that was presented in late June. For example, while previous wording respecting natural materials is well-intentioned, it is proposed to be removed as it is more difficult to enforce, whereby the intent really is to ensure that a design is made of high-quality, durable material, which could include synthetic material which may be visually indistinguishable. Staff are also proposing changes to the lighting provisions in the downtown core, recognizing that there are some forms of high quality or attractive signs that have some form of internal illumination, while highlighting it as the cabinet or box signs that have created the biggest visual quality concerns that have been conveyed to us. To that end, the draft bylaw proposes a narrower cabinet sign definition that includes enclosed boxes, usually clad in plastic and which may or may not be illuminated, and proposes to prohibit those in the downtown. While the bylaw proposes several provisions specifically related to our downtown core, the provisions tend to focus on prohibiting several undesirable categories of signs, while less so on specific design. Planning staff are currently working on updating the downtown core design guidelines, which will allow for a more tailored and property-specific approach, which is then supported by an incentive tool such as the Community Improvement Plan to assist with good signs. Our objective is to present the revised downtown core design guidelines for council in early January, in time for the launch of the 2024 CIP season. With that in mind, I'd like to acknowledge the work of the planning clerk, as well as town committees, staff, and organizations who've taken the time to assist staff in developing a more modern approach to regulating signs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor McGuire.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Carl. I'm wondering how, with these new edits, are the current downtown design guidelines going to be enforced through the sign bylaw downtown?
Yes, go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the general provisions for the downtown core relate to a variety of lighting, mural signs, certain types of signs that are not permitted within the downtown core at all. So the design guidelines that have been in effect since 2013 speak a little bit more towards the design, looking at the proportion of the signs, the width versus height, a little bit more prescription in terms of color, in terms of material. These are things that are more difficult to enforce in a regulatory bylaw that either complies or doesn't comply, but gives a little bit more of it. The expectation is that the design guidelines that get into more of that specific detail of an individual design on an individual property that allows us to assess a little in a bit more detail how that particular sign fits with that facade and that local context. That's where we're looking at through the downtown core design guidelines, and our expectation is that the design guidelines previously and in the future would form something of a terms of reference or a set of expectations that somebody is, I guess, suggested to meet in order to qualify for funding under a community improvement plan.
Okay.
So I guess my concern with that is that from the Municipal Heritage Committee's recommendations through the consultation previous, those provisions that were included have been removed now, and I don't see them replaced with a similar, some kind of other tool to get that downtown design guideline look that we've been working towards over the last 10 years. So I'm very nervous about that. I think it's great that we've got the material provision taken out, because that through the consultation it showed that you can have a really beautiful sign made out of synthetic material or organic material or whatever. My concern with the cabinet signs is that it just includes rectangular shaped signs. So you've got cabinet signs shaped like letters, cabinet signs shaped like logos. And really what it came back to is the internally illuminated signs, or the luminous signs, are the ones that don't really mesh with the design guidelines in that downtown core. Which leads to my second question on this, and that is, I'm wondering is there anything for dark sky provisions currently with site plan when somebody's putting a property together, or is there any kind of dark sky? I know when we used to have site plans to council, it was mentioned, but was that a voluntary thing on the property owner, or is there any tools for that with the planning process? Go ahead, Carl.
No, that's through you, Mr. Chair. That's an excellent question. Our official plan includes some fairly broad language about supporting dark skies when negotiating a development application. So as an example, through the site plan process, particularly when we're looking at commercial development or development that creates where somebody's building a parking lot and needs to put up some light fixtures, we typically ask for full cutoff dark sky compliant lighting so that it's pointed downward. So that's something that's never really been a difficult challenge in achieving. Typically developers are willing to do that. That's just a design thing that they work on. So I think that's how that's administered through site plan approval. Of course, not every development, not every sign triggers a site plan approval process. But when it comes to, and the point about looking at sort of how do we best address lighting, that's certainly a fair comment. And I think the recommendation of staff is that lighting is something we look at on a holistic basis as well, not just in terms of lit signs, but overall within the whole context of the community, including looking at parking, municipal operations as well. So one thing that one option that council can consider is looking at a dark skies policy or a dark skies bylaw that creates a little bit of lighting specific regulation that may or may not coincide with the provisions of the sign bylaw. But with respect to dark skies and site plan approval, and that typically relates to larger scale developments that we usually not always, but we usually don't see in the downtown core.
Thank you. Councillor Miller?
Thank you. And thank you, Manager Grenke. And please pass on my thanks to Mary. You heard us loud and clear when we asked for more consultation, and I think the policy is a lot better because of it. So I will be supporting that, and we'll look forward to your updated design guidelines that can be done in conjunction with this. Thanks.
Did you have your hand up? Yeah. Councillor Robinson and then Councillor McKenna.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I will be supporting it. I like the idea, the same as Councillor Miller, that the suggestion to include the sign associations in discussion, because they've got a lot of experience with other municipalities as well, and it appears as if they had something to bring to the table. So I'm happy that you worked together and came up with a new approach.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, just the dark sky discussion is important to me, and I would like to see in the future some further broader application of it than just in new larger development. That I don't know, am I hearing we don't have it shows up in our official plan, and it shows up here and there, but we don't have an overarching position on dark sky, or do we?
Go ahead, Carl.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. It is the easiest and best way to implement it is through site plan approval. So the zoning bylaw can get into some detail, but again, those are, when it comes to design, in my mind, design, it's more difficult to manage design through zoning. Site plan approval or some other mechanism would be a better, more tailored approach to regulating design, including lighting.
So if we wanted to strengthen that, it's, as we update our official plan, is a good place. That's the overarching, that's going to give direction to everything else. Is that fair? Okay, thank you. And one more, just on the, Councillor McGuire brought up the our Municipal Heritage Committee advice. And if we're moving to a heritage district downtown, and I wouldn't ask Councillor McGuire, I wouldn't mind asking him if he would, through you, just clarify that, because if we aren't following the Municipal Heritage Committee's advice and we're moving to a downtown heritage district, will this sign bylaw, is it conflicting with the direction we're going, at least in the downtown? Because I don't want it to, obviously.
I think Carl could probably address that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the council has a fair bit of leeway, or entirely, council has full discretion on what should or should not be included within a heritage conservation district. So we are embarking, we've released the RFP, and one of the scopes of the RFP is to define the boundaries of heritage conservation district, which may or may not align exactly with the boundaries of the downtown core. So there is that possibility for alignment, but depending on what the results of the heritage conservation district study say, those will inform the decisions council will need to make on the plan, which includes the detailed design guidelines and the more prescriptive elements for the designated area. So I think the best advice I can give is that at that point, then we can review the sign bylaw and the heritage conservation district plan if council wants to proceed with that, and make sure that they align and don't work against each other.
Okay.
Okay. Mayor Pecco?
Yeah, thank you. And actually, I was going to ask about the Heritage Conservation District as well. And it was in place today. It would probably guide the development of this bylaw, but I guess we'll have to be prepared to make changes in the future when that is in place. And we inherit, I guess, the variety of signs that are downtown now. As much as I think we'd like to see us have a consistent impression in the downtown, it's not going to be possible when we've got the legacy of all the signs that are out there now, especially the box signs and the signs which we grandfathered through this process. But so I'll be supportive of the bylaw. And just a question regarding how we communicate to the public, how we communicate to businesses. So will there be a sign guidelines document that businesses can sort of follow when it comes to understanding what is permitted and what isn't, and what is recommended and what is discouraged?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the plan is to create a guideline to support the sign bylaw and create a user-friendly and visually compatible document to assist these sorts of decisions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just chime in and say, of course, I'm going to support this. This is a bylaw that was written, I think, in 1994. And it's time to update it. And if there's adjustments we make, we can do that. But I think this is the third time it's come to committee in the whole. And I think staff has been very, very responsive to council's concerns and did their absolute best to address those. And I think this draft bylaw reflects that. So I will support that bylaw. Councilor McGuire.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think it would be ideal if the Heritage Conservation District was in place today and that could inform it. But at the end of the day, we know we have the design guidelines are from 2014. There's no new information from that side of things that's going to come forward. I think it's a big missed opportunity to not have that included in the bylaw tonight. But it's more vague, and so yeah, I can understand. I don't see a consensus for that. When it comes to the luminous internally illuminated signs, yeah, we can wait till the zoning gets reviewed. We can wait until there's a dark sky bylaw. But at the end of the day, we know that they use more energy, so they're not as good for the climate. We know that they're not as good for residents. They're not as good for nature and animals and birds and everything else that gets affected by the stray light. I don't understand a good reason why we wouldn't include that in this bylaw. It'll be a simple amendment, and I would support this tonight if we'd include that as amended. But as the bylaw is proposed, I would not be supporting it right now.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna?
I just, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think in an ideal world, it would be nice to have the official plan give really solid direction on our lighting. And I would like to think that the Heritage District development would also give further, and it just seems like premature to come up with a new sign bylaw before we have those two foundational documents in place. So I'd rather see it deferred, but.
Okay, I think that, any other comments? Yeah.
Well, I guess I appreciate what's being said, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. I think it's, are we better off moving ahead with what we have now and making an amendment to it once we have the Heritage Conservation District plan in place? We can review dark skies and make an amendment to that in the future. My concern today is if we simply defer any action on this, we have what we have. And it's not going to be, I guess, as prescriptive as what we have now, as a new one. So I guess I always think there's always opportunity to amend things as we move forward. I would be interested in learning more about a dark sky amendment to this. And if that's, I don't know if staff can invite, do we have a committee of the whole, is this on for tonight's council, or is there a committee of the whole next week? Yes.
Yes, there is.
So we could, if there's wording you would like to see, and if committee agrees it makes sense, then perhaps this could simply come back at next week's CAL for a brief discussion on that element of it. And then again, if we bring it to council the following week, I think it's probably timely enough. We're not in a big deadline here, but I also don't want to be sitting with what we have right now when we have this in front of us, an opportunity to make a change.
Okay, that would be 4 times at Cal. And I think that this, I mean, these things can be addressed after. We have a 1994 bylaw that we're trying to update. And, you know, and bylaws are living documents. So I'm fully prepared to pass this at next week's council meeting. It's not on the agenda tonight. So but that being said, if committee has questions and want another discussion, I don't know what we're going to discuss, because we're discussing it now, right? So what new information would come forward? My question would be, with a new COW discussion, what new information do we need from staff? Because we've discussed it as we're sitting here. So is there anything new that we would need to discuss again? Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and I don't mind your suggestion. I don't think it's fair to staff to ask them to come back with an amendment in a week. It's not. So unless Councillor McGuire has some clause around the dark sky that you could readily insert, I don't think it's fair to ask staff to do it, turn it around in a week. So either we proceed as you suggest, or if Councillor McGuire has the wording and it fits and everybody likes it next week, we insert it.
But there's no real new information. I mean, anyway, I'll go with the majority here. So if we want another discussion next week, that's what we'll have. For me, I don't need it, but.
I guess the question, if I may, to Carl, was it if we wanted to incorporate guidelines regarding dark sky, is this something, would it be a fairly extensive piece of work, or simply a small amendment to the existing policy? I don't know how far it has to go, and if it is something that can be done fairly quickly or requires a fair amount of research and consultation with other bylaws, then I could appreciate, that not enough time to put it together.
Go ahead, Carl.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my recommendation as it relates to items of relating to dark skies, we're looking at different forms of lighting, different colors of lighting. It's a topic that's broader than simply relating to signs. So for example, we allow externally illuminated signs, or I think this bylaw would support externally illuminated signs where where there's the sign board and then a gooseneck light shining on it. So that there's certainly that possibility for light pollution there. I think my recommendation is, I think a question of whether we can insert a simple clause in here requiring dark skies compliance for signs and only signs. I would need to take that back and consider that. I don't want to make the call on that just without having a broader look. But I think if we're going to be looking at dark skies as a whole, my recommendation would be that we look at that as a separate piece and look more holistically at lighting materials, lighting colors, different kinds of light fixtures, and a broader discussion, including potentially on municipal operations as well.
Okay, so if I can finish my comment then. So I'll be prepared to move ahead, but I would like to see it coming back in the future because it's going to go far beyond just a sign bylaw.
That's right.
Okay.
Councilor Barr?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I agree that for the dark sky provisions, we need to have a bigger conversation, but I don't think that needs to stop us from making a tangible difference with this piece of legislation. We've got, to quote the Town of Perth sign guidelines, they have internally lit signs are not permitted. The light source must be directed to signs so that it does not shine into adjacent properties or cause glare for motorists or pedestrians. And then it has another bullet that says lighting must be dark sky compliant. It's straightforward, it's clear, it's simple. Adding clauses like that into this current bylaw can make a difference today or next week when we approve it at council. And then we can still have that greater conversation on a dark sky bylaw in the future, but I just don't see the reason to leave it out today.
Okay, I could bring this to an end. I'm ready to go ahead and we'll discuss dark sky in the broader context of planning context, whether it be signs, lighting in parking lots, or as a general topic. But I'm ready to go ahead with this bylaw, and then certainly direct staff will have a further discussion. So that would be my preference. Do we want an amendment to this particular bylaw just for signs? So I'm ready to go ahead, and anybody else ready to go ahead and then talk about it later? 1, 2, anybody else? 3.
If I may speak, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess I can appreciate where Councilor McGuire is going, and when it says dark, we all see there's definitions. There's more to it simply than that statement. So I'd have to go along with it. I'll proceed with it as it is, but I'd like to see the dark sky stuff come forward in reasonable time frame, because I think we can simply make an amendment of this policy at that time.
Sure. So that's, I think, do you want to chime in?
Nope.
No, you're good. So I think we have consensus that we're going to go ahead with the bylaw, and then of course we'll have the discussion about dark sky in a holistic nature for the whole town going forward. So we'll go ahead with the signed bylaw. Okay. You're still there for the draft patio bylaw report. Director Grenke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff are proposing to bring forward a new bylaw that streamlines and facilitates the temporary occupancy of patios, bistro tables, and merchandise displays on our public road allowances. The bylaw that's currently in effect was passed in 2013 and outlines an approval process for outdoor patios, including council approval of the terms and conditions, as well as design provisions on both public and private property. The 2020 pandemic forced significant public health requirements on businesses, and for a period of time that meant that the ability to operate outside was essential before restrictions on indoor commerce were lifted. Like many other communities, the town of Smith Falls rapidly pivoted, and council adopted several measures to make it easier, faster, and cheaper for a business, usually a restaurant, to use their sidewalk to conduct business while retaining safe passageways and separations to protect municipal operations and safety. The temporary and conditional waivers of some of the rules were extended in 2021 and 2022, which gave us an opportunity to consider how we can look at making some of this permanent through a new bylaw and ultimately make it easier and support local businesses as well as an interactive streetscape that draws people. In 2022 and 2023, staff consulted with local businesses as well as with the Downtown Business Association, which helpfully provided advice and feedback. The draft patio bylaw was originally presented to council in April of this year, however was deferred alongside the draft sign bylaw to allow some modifications. The reason that patios and signs are being presented together is because outdoor merchandise displays are currently regulated through the sign bylaw, and we're proposing that they be regulated through the new patio bylaw that more broadly deals with the temporary commercial occupancy of public road allowances. I think it fits better in that category. To quickly summarize the key provisions of the bylaw, we propose to delegate approval authority of the sidewalk lease permit application from council to staff, which is similar to the process that unfolded the last 3 years, and the bylaw spells out the information that needs to be provided on an application. The bylaw is only intended to apply to fixed patios that remain in place seasonally and not be removed overnight. Littler things such as outdoor merchandise displays and bistro tables that are unfenced and retain a 1.5 meter path of travel on the sidewalk and are taken in every night are exempt from the need for a permit and can operate without the need for specific municipal approval. So that is where somebody has a cafe with a couple of tables that come in every night. There wouldn't be a permit process for that. For seasonal patios, whether or not there's a deck, they would need to come in every winter to allow for winter operations. Applicants are responsible for providing sufficient information on the permit form to allow for building, planning, fire, and public works staff to review and, where necessary, inspect. The bylaw outlines several design criteria to ensure an attractive and safe arrangement. One important change is that once a patio is approved, that approval carries forward for future years, so the business owner has the certainty to invest in the fixtures and materials, and they just need to provide updated insurance to the town on a yearly basis. While fees have been waived during the COVID period, the bylaw does recommend fees be established going forward for new patios, which are roughly commensurate with the staff time involved in processing, circulating, and inspecting the patios. The bylaw does not address patios on private property, which would be dealt with through simply the planning, the zoning and site plan approval process, nor permanent encroachments such as structural changes. If somebody is looking at actually changing a municipal road allowance and creating a permanent encroachment, that would be administered through the town's encroachment bylaw and through council approval if that's triggered there. So I'll pause there and look for any discussion on the proposed patio bylaw.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Miller and then Councillor McGuire.
Thanks again, Manager Grenke. So we waived patio fees during COVID to support particularly our restaurant industry, which is still struggling. So I'm wondering if you know what the fees were prior to COVID, just so I can understand. If I would assume there's been an increase, but.
And while he's looking for that, I'll just say I've got to run. I got a train to catch.
Excuse the mayor. He's got to go meet Santa.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Carl.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the seasonal rental rates are, there's a refundable $100 application fee at the time the application is filed. A non-refundable renewal fee is required at the time the seasonal fee is paid, and then the seasonal rates depend on whether the facility is unlicensed, where there's $100, or licensed, which is $150.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. Sorry. So I'm looking at the report, and there's a chart with what type of patio or display and what the current fee is. So are you saying that what you just said is how we used to do it, or are you saying that they get a rebate off these fees now? Sorry if I didn't catch that.
The provisions I just read, Mr. Chair, are for under the 2013 bylaw. So that created a differentiation for unlicensed versus licensed establishment which doesn't, it's an interesting distinction. It doesn't really change how we, when we're processing an application ourselves, there isn't really a difference in the amount of time spent on an application, whether it's licensed or unlicensed. So the sidewalk lease fees that are outlined in Schedule A of the bylaw are what's proposed. So those would be one time with a $50 inspection each year to make sure they're in place. So the upfront fee would be more expensive, and then the yearly review fee would be less.
Okay. Councilor McGuire?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see the fees waived. I agree with everything else in the bylaw. I think that, as Councilor Miller said, restaurants and have gone through a lot over the last few years, and with inflation, it's not ending anytime soon. I think the fees would represent a nominal revenue to the town with the number of patios we have existing. So for now, I'd like to waive them. If it starts to become an issue in the future, we could look back on it. But for now, I think, and also the patios are something we were really encouraging with the CIP and the downtown revitalization plans. So I think it's a small gesture the town could make to make it easier. They've got to get insurance. They got to get engineering plans, designs, and all the rest. So this is just a small thing we could take away.
Councilor McKenna?
I support the bylaw as well, and would support I would like to put a time limit on if we agreed on waiving those fees, so either annually or for the next couple of years. I think restaurants are restaurants are in huge trouble, and so if we, I agree. I don't think we're going to have 200 of them. We'll have a dozen maybe, and that kind of fee won't. I think that money is better in the restaurateur's pocket, but for either a year or for the next 2 years, waive the fees. But I'm supportive of the bylaw.
Seeing waive, you're okay with that? I am as well. And if conditions change, then we can revisit the fee structure. But for the number of patios that we have here, really, it is nominal, and whoever said they're in deep trouble, they are. So I'm happy to myself and everybody else, it sounds like, to waive the fees. But I do support the bylaw as written other than that. And I think we have agreement there. Yep, good. Yes, go ahead, Carl.
Mr. Chair, just to confirm committee's direction, is committee looking to waive the fees on a permanent basis or look on a temporary basis where that's revisited? I'm just looking to phrase it appropriately when this comes back for approval.
Good question. So I'd open that up if we want to do 2 years. Do it for 2 years. So I agree with that. Everyone okay with that? 2 years? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
So that'll come forward, council next week, and we'll get that together. And you're still there. You're busy. 9.3 lift park lot control at Bellamy Farms Phase 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one will be very quick. A couple of weeks ago, Council considered and approved a bylaw to lift park lot control to accommodate the ultimate division of several blocks within the Phase 2 of the Bellamy Farm subdivision. So the units continue to be constructed, and the developers have come back with additional surveys and requests for council to pass a bylaw lifting the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act to allow the division of these 4 blocks into, I believe, a total of 17 different residential units, and that needs to come forward by bylaw.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? That's a big thumbs up. More building, so that's great. Thank you very much for your work tonight.
Thank you.
And that'll come forward next week for you, the bylaw.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
So Chief Cheesebro is here to talk about ice water equipment and helmets.
Thank you. Good evening. My report tonight is dealing with approving the RFP that was submitted by AJ Stone Company to supply ice water rescue equipment and helmets. The Smith Falls Fire Department has been providing ice water rescue response since 2000. This was a result back then of the federal grant funding for all fire departments on the Rideau Corridor. Our department, along with others, have maintained that ice water rescue within our establishing and regulating bylaw. The equipment that we currently have in service is now coming up to 12 years old. It's been fixed numerous times and repaired. And based on the manufacturers, it's not recommended to remain in service for emergency response, simply for theory and training indoors when we're training the new firefighters. At the same time, the helmets that we currently have in service fall under the structural part of the equipment that's required for the firefighters under NFPA 1971. That standard states that after 10 years, the equipment must be replaced, must be taken out of service, can't be used for training, can't be used for anything. That has to be removed. We issued 2 RFPs, one for the ice water rescue equipment and one for the helmets. We had 3 responds to that RFP, but however, only one company submitted for both items that we had put out in the RFPs. Based on the RFPs that we received, one company that bid on both actually has the equipment in stock and can deliver it ASAP. So my recommendation tonight for this equipment is to award the contract to AJ Stone Company to provide both the ice water rescue equipment and the helmets, as they were the sole company that tendered on both pieces of equipment and all items are in stock. Option 2 was to split the RFP, award the ice water rescue equipment to Canadian Safety Supply, and award the helmet contract to AJ Stone. I didn't recommend this as Canadian Safety cannot deliver the ice water rescue equipment until spring of 2024. Obviously, we've used this up until this point in time, but given the condition that they're going into is ice water, it's probably not a good time to experience a leak when we have the fellows out there doing the rescues. There is a difference between the 2 bids, $1,157. However, we had budgeted $30,000 back in 2021. It was a carryover in 22. And the total amount, if we go with the AJ Stone bid, inclusive of the non-refundable HST, is $21,018. So we're well within the budgeted amount, and that is my recommendation for this evening.
Thank you. Questions, comments? You have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. My only question is, why was there only one price for the helmets?
I have no idea. The RFP went out, and it went out the same as the ice water rescue equipment, and Stone was a single
They're
bid
the
on
only
it.
ones that bid on it, kind of thing.
Exactly. All the companies received the exact same RFPs, same as Canadian Safety did, and so did Raven, but they only bid on the one document.
Okay, great. No, I've done that training with Holy equipment with holes in it, and I can attest that this is an important purchase. So I support it tonight.
So you've got support here, and that'll come forward next week at council to get that done.
Thank you.
Okay. 9.5, amending connecting link resolution report with Mr. McMahon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be a quick one. So as council recalls, on October 23rd, I presented a report for the application to be submitted on behalf of the town for the Connecting Link 2024-2025 program for the Beckwith Street structures. As part of the application for Connecting Links, which has been made, by the way, we made that application on the 21st of November. Deadline was November 22nd. We had to provide a council resolution, and that was the reason for bringing the report to council in the first place, to pass a resolution to submit. So this is somewhat administrative. When we submitted the resolution, there was some verbiage that we were not privy to from MTO. We did not receive the template initially for the proper verbiage to use, and we do have that now. We have consulted with MTO, and they are fine with the fact that we've made application. We provided the original resolution with the understanding that it's not correct, that there is some additional verbiage. Basically, without reading it verbatim, the verbiage does speak to, that the town will be responsible for any overruns over and above what the funding will provide. And if council recalls, it is 90 cent dollars up to a maximum of $5 million for the application itself. So if the project were worth $5 million, we would receive $4.5 million, and we'd have to kick in the balance of $500,000 to finish the project. if for some reason costs overran the 5 million, then the town would be on the hook for the balance. So that's what the verbiage basically speaks to, that we're committed to funding the project for providing our 10% of whatever the project costs are going to be, and that will provide funds in excess of $5 million should we need it. So.
Thank you. So it's just the wording of the motion and to get the motion in.
That's right.
And I see that on the council meeting this evening, and luckily Councillor McKenna is going to read all that verbiage. So I did have one question though on the bridge or the bridges, because it seems to me this is the third rehabilitation we've done in my time. So that we should be good for quite a while now on the Beckwith Street bridges.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. So that's coming forward tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we had deferred our in-camera session. We have no committee, board, and external organization updates.
I have a,
Oh, you do? Okay.
sorry.
Was it on here? Go ahead.
No, I didn't know it had to be. Sorry.
I should have asked them.
Okay, sorry. It's very brief. The Leonard County's elected its new warden, Steve Fournier from Drummond North Emsley, and I would hope the mayor might send him a note, congratulate him, and thank Warden McLaren for his work over the last year. Secondly, the county has signed off on their budget for 2024. Pretty significant increase to our share of that for good reason. Housing, long-term care, paramedic and ambulance services, social services, all those services that have gone up for everyone in the county, and our share has gone up. You'll see it reflected. I think CO Morse has those numbers now. I think you'll see it reflected in our next draft. And that was it.
Okay. Thank you. CO Morse can maybe fill us in.
Yeah, if I can just augment what was just said. So the overall impact is not insignificant. It's about $225,000 more than this year. So we will put that in the first draft, and you'll have a chance to talk about it. We have requested some insight into what's driving the figures, so in such a profound way. So I'm hoping by the time we deliver the first draft, we'll have some answers as to why it's gone up. And it's likely a combination between the weighted assessment that we pay for those services potentially increasing, we'll confirm that, and the overall cost of those services going up. So we'll have a better sense, and we can break that down for you on the 18th of December.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And I know the paramedics arbitration award was significant. And so, I mean, that's just one example. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So that's that. We have no information listing correspondence items. We have no notice of motion. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion that this committee adjourn its proceedings at 4:50 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor McGuire. All in favor? Okay, we just take 2 minutes and we'll begin a council meeting. Excuse myself.
AJ.
Okay, good evening and welcome to our special council meeting this evening, Monday, November 27th. I'm Councillor Jay Brennan. I'm filling in for Mayor Panko this evening. I'll begin with the land acknowledgement. On November 27th, 2023, we acknowledge that the sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace, friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. So I'll call the meeting to order, and approval of the agenda is with Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Maguire that the November 27th, 2023 special council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Maguire, that the November 27th, 2023 special committee of council meeting agenda be approved as circulated. All in favor? Carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none. We have no approval of minutes. Any council reports? Given this is a special meeting, we have no council reports. We'll defer those to next week. No mayor's announcements, no presentations or proclamation. The consent agenda is with Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Robinson that items in consent report 010-2023 received from the clerk be received and adopted.
And I'll look to the clerk to go over the consent agenda.
Thank you. On the consent agenda this evening, there's two bylaws. We have bylaw 10494-2023 to lift the residential type 1 holding zone on part of phase 2 of the Maple Ridge subdivision. We have bylaw 10495-2003 to adopt the Recreation Hall of Fame terms of reference. We also have 4 resolutions coming forward. The first to receive the 2023 Utilities Quarterly Report. The second to receive the Bylaw Department Activity Report. The third to support Chatham-Kent for Time for Change, Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And the fourth is to appoint the Old Home Week Task Force.
Thank you. Anybody would like anything pulled out of that agenda? Seeing none, I'll go ahead with the motion. Moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that items of consent report 010-2023 be received from the clerk and be received and adopted. All in favor? Okay, we have one motion this evening, which is with Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Chair Brennan. I apologize in advance. I'll be doing my best to get through this long, and my old voice will be scratchy and I'll sound like Clint Eastwood here, but I'll do my best. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Miller. That report number 2023-130 dated October 18th, 2023, regarding the 2024-25 Connecting Links Program funding application be received, and that the Council of Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls directs staff to apply for and supports the application for a grant opportunity from the Ministry of Transportation under the 2024-2025 Connecting Links Program for the Beckwith Street New Lock and Pedestrian Structure Rehabilitation. And further, that the submitted application meets the requirements of MTO's Connecting Links program as described in the program guide. And further, that the application is complete, factually accurate. Further, the council pass a resolution to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a contribution agreement with MTO if the town is successful in securing funding for the Connecting Link funding program. And further, that the town of Smith Falls commits to funding its share of the project submitted from capital reserves, including ineligible project costs. And further, that the town of Smith Falls acknowledges that the responsibility of the town to fund any project cost overruns incurred that exceed the maximum grant amount approved. And further, that if the application is successful, the town of Smith Falls will proceed with the project in accordance with the timelines identified and meet the milestones and completion dates specified in the application. And further, that the town of Smith Falls Rail comply with the conditions that apply to the designated connecting link under the Highway Traffic Act to ensure that the safe and efficient movement of provincial traffic.
Thank you. And discussion?
This is council discussed and approved this at a recent council meeting. However, there was one little clause about cost overruns that was omitted inadvertently, and this is just cleaning up that loose end.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? And now it's my turn. Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Miller. That report number 2023-130 dated October 18th, 2023 regarding the 2024-25 Connecting Links Program funding application be received, and that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls directs staff to apply for and supports the application for a grant opportunity from the Ministry of Transportation under the 2024-25 Connecting Links Program for Beckwith Street, New Lock, and pedestrian structure rehabilitation. And further, the submitted application meets the requirements of MTO's Connecting Links Program as described in the program guide. And further, that the application is complete and factually accurate. And further, that the council pass a resolution to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute contribution agreement with MTO if the town is successful in securing the funding for the Connecting Link funding program. And further, that the town of Smith Falls commits to funding its share of the projected submitted from capital reserves, including ineligible project costs. And further, the town of Smith Falls acknowledges that the responsibility of the town to fund any project costs overruns incurred that exceed the maximum grant amount provided. And further, that the application is successful and the town of Smith Falls will proceed with the project in accordance with the timelines identified and meet milestones and completion dates specified in the application. And further, that the town will comply with the conditions that apply to the designated connecting link under the Highway Traffic Act to ensure the safe and efficient movement of provincial traffic. All in favor? Carried. We have no bylaws. Any inquiries or announcements from my colleagues? Seeing none. No confirmatory bylaw. The adjournment motion is with Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller, that the council adjourn its meetings at 5:08 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Miller. This council adjourn its proceedings at 5:08 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of the council. All in favor? Carried. We're adjourned.